So what made me want to make music was purely trying to emulate the emotion certain records gave to me when I was younger. I think when you're younger, you tend to have a little bit more raw emotion to yourself. I think things kind of have a little bit more of a emphasis on you, and music's one of those things where it has a way of mainlining to the subconscious, or to trigger emotions. Essentially, I mean that's kind of my overview of music, that we are pretty much teeing up emotional triggers in a similar way to any time-based art. So film, you can study techniques in order to trigger emotions. Now with music, those emotions could be triggered within a pop music setting, that they could be triggered within a nightclub setting, and it's just such a kind of beautiful array of ways to do that. But what made me want to make music? I just sheer passion, sheer passion. Because if it was money, um, I probably would have stopped a long time ago. I probably wouldn't have kept on going. It's I I think what is I said to myself, if I no matter no matter how much money you make, if you make an average income, you're lucky enough to go on holiday once a year, what would you wake up and do with every day of your life? Um, and mine would be sitting in a dark studio somewhere, fiddling around with beats that probably no one's ever going to hear because I'm too psychotic to. Sorry, so for some psychosis, they probably won't ever see the light of day. But I love it. I love it. I wouldn't trade it for the world. Oh, the other thing that made me make music was I was fighting for my job, so I had no option. So I had to really knuckle down, and I got I got made redundant for my job in 2006 at the age of, I was about 24. And I said to myself, I had to go back. I had to move back to my mum's house. So as a 25-year-old, that's quite demasculating to lose your kind of personal freedom at that age. But I said to myself, give myself 6 months, uh, work a part-time job. If I can't make as much or more within 6 months, then go about working in an office. Do something like that. But within about 3 months, I was fortunate enough to be doing okay. I was commissioned my first remix from a label called Wall of Sound in the UK. Wall of Sound, known for releasing Soul Wax's early stuff, Royksop, tons of kind of left field indie acts. They gave me my first remix, and that remix was played by some great electronic acts like Justice, people like Tiga. And Tiga gave me my first record deal off the back of that remix. So it's it's a little bit of luck, but at the same time, hard work was put in to be able to get to that level. So yes, it's a mix of those two things: being fired, having a little bit of luck, and just trying to work hard as learning how to make records.
And before, like, so before you got made redundant or got fired, what was had you actually, like, been making music like as more of a hobby back then?
It was pure. It was So I got my first ever release was in 2006, and sorry if you can hear the plane in the background. I'll just wait a minute for that.
No, it's pretty. Zoom's
helicopter.
Pretty,
In Los Angeles, there's just like so many helicopters that fly over your head. So to answer your question, yeah, in 2006, it was a really interesting time for electronic music, because there's this new thing called MySpace. There still wasn't this homogenous kind of global culture. So you could still fly to Australia, and Australia would still have its own bespoke electronic scene. You could fly to Japan, and it would still be uniquely Japanese. And that's, since 2006, that's kind of been lost. But I think that's a culture beyond music as well, where everything seems to be kind of a little bit more formulaic now. So with MySpace, it just sorry, Tom.
Everything's sort of become global because of social media, probably.
Yeah, 100%, because social media, because bringing everything together. Like anything, it's there's good and there's bad in it. I'm not, sitting here saying, oh, this is a bad thing. Getting all conspiracy theory on you, even though I love to go there, and this completely has no validation to it. Just it'll just be fun. But yeah, no, the electronic music scenes. So from 2006, there was a reputation for electronic music coming out of London, and there certainly was coming out of Paris. And there was this weird, like when people from London went and performed in Paris, there's this weird kind of cultural exchange, and it's incredible. It's the kind of most, and maybe because I was younger as well, but that was the kind of most magical era for me, because there was no formulas as well. So you had some really odd music. It was kind of the end of electro clash, and there was a lot of great music being made around that era, bands like the Gossip. So there's still that influence of guitar music, but there's still that rawness to it, which kind of it was messy as hell. It was, I mean, I made awful records back then, awful records. I couldn't even bring myself to YouTube listening to those records, but there was an energy to them of just naivety, not knowing what I was doing, probably having too much confidence in thinking that I know what I was doing, which I had. I wish I kind of like, kind of had, a little bit more. And it was a great time. And from 2006 to say, within the last 14, 15 years, my my personal journey has changed. So I can only speak for myself. I can't speak for the entire scene as a whole. But I kind of, I literally, I made no money. I struggled to pay the bills. So I was making £10,000 a year, and but I loved making records, and I had a chip on my shoulder about, kind of portraying the underground, kind of being true to the cause. And then I realized no one gave. Can I swear?
Yeah, of course. No,
No one gave a shit. No one gives a shit. No one gives a shit. Everybody, and it's the reality with music is you will only make a living if someone else can, to a degree, make a living from you, or a company or an entity can make a living. Whether that's a manager, whether that's a label. I mean, people moan about major labels, for example, and yeah, there's some little dodgy details in the contracts, which hasn't gone away. It doesn't really suit the artist. But the one thing major labels can do is have get your records heard on a global scale, and that is, as a musician, as a record producer, where any part of the creation process, you want your records heard. If you don't want your records heard, then you know it's I remember around 2011. I used to always moan about successful artists because it was a reflection upon me. It wasn't anything to do with them. And like, most people in life moan because they secretly kind of can't reflect. And I was really envious of a lot of these acts. But then I would be obsessed with, Burial, with Aphex Twin, with some, these techno records I was playing at Fabric, like obsessed with the sonics of them. And I kind of realized who, who is the better artist? The artist that, has millions of listeners on primetime radio, or the artist that's making music that's so esoteric but so pushing the boundaries, and just as a record producer, you disrespect like everything about it. Who's the better artist? And the answer is, and I kind of realized the answer is neither, because both kind of have their purpose. There's
Yeah.
nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with a generic. I'm really holding back from holding names because I don't have any like any negativity towards successful acts. But in order to be successful, there does tend to be a generic nature in the way to have success. It's very, very rare. I've seen a hugely commercial popular record that is so groundbreaking that it's just completely blowing my mind. I can't remember the last time I seen that. Maybe Mr. Wazzo Flatbeat getting to #1 in the UK, but that was also tied into a commercial. So it's yeah, I think I'm just kind of at peace with it all because I'm one of the very few people in dance music who's seen the full spectrum of underground clubs, whether it's the Berkheim Panorama Bar, which is held up in high regards, and in dance music circles, to having #1 songs in the pop charts, and it's been the weirdest experience. It's been so strange. It's
Is there a
really
turn,
odd.
because it's really interesting to hear, you kind of, you felt like you were undervalued almost as a,
I was never undervalued. I was never undervalued. There's never like, oh, poor me. It's like I said,
but when it was sort
it's
of
yeah,
year type of thing, and it was like, you were very interested, you were very passionate about making music, but
100%. Yeah.
like no one gives a shit about what I'm necessarily like only passionate about. People, was there a moment where you changed and you sort of thought it's okay to make commercial records and make pop
Yeah,
records?
when I made £8,000 a year, that's the sobering thing. You're kind of, yeah. I mean that's a very sobering thought. Outside of that, though, outside of trying to pay the, because it's really not all about money. A lot of it was pride, because we all, whether you deny it or you don't, we are all kind of built on popular commercial music. From child to certainly teenagers, we are very exposed to mainstream music. I was just very fortunate that the mainstream music I was exposed to was an era of British dance music that has probably never been repeated, like The Prodigy, the Chemical Brothers, Basement Jacks. You had Daft Punk on the TV all the time,
Yeah,
and that is pretty, in my opinion, is a pretty high level of quality of dance music
incredible.
to be exposed to. And it was on Top of the Pops every week. Armin van Helden, Mr. Wazza. So like, you tune in at 8 years old, 10 years old, and you'd hear Flatbeat with Flat Eric, and it'd be like, what the hell was this? And it was nice because even at a young age, something being against the norm and bubblegum pop, that you can still be drawn to that. And it was, so we're all kind of ingrained with the pop sensibilities, but we just don't really know it. So the turning point for me was taking pride as a record producer to be able to make records that could cross over. And it's really not, it's not rocket science, because we all know the system in order to make a successful record. It's all ingrained in us from a young age, and the formula hasn't really changed for since Bill Haley, like Rock Around the Clock. It's kind of the same formula. Um, so I have no pretentiousness in in that side as well. You know, I do have as an artist, I have a devil and an angel kind of on my shoulder each time. Like, do I arrange this record into a intro first, pre chorus verse structure, or do I make an 8-minute kind of dub? But I'm fortunate. I'm very fortunate to be in that position. I'm very, very, very lucky. So yeah, I think you said again, going back to the original question, what was that point? Um, I think it's just trying to prove that I could do it. You know, my one of my heroes is Trevor Horn, and Trevor Horn had a it's a little bit uh it's a little bit exaggerated, but he makes a very good point in the sense that you can't call yourself a hit record producer if you haven't had a hit record yourself. Now, I mean that's questionable because look at I'm not sure how many times Max Mind gets mentioned on your podcast, but you know Max Minds does. So it's a bit, but there's a little bit of a glimmer of truth in that, in the sense that if you can do it yourself, you can do. And this is something that A&Rs haven't worked out for like. I mean, they did in like the '90s, but not nowadays. It's odd, and I can take pride in that. That I've done it with no marketing, no zero marketing, um, and had a couple of times. But at the same time, I look back on my music at that point, and that's not the happiest. That's not. I don't feel that's my best music. So by something being commercially successful, does not make it a good song. Does not make it a good song at all. It gives it it's almost like a badge of honor. That's the best way I can put it. It's like it's a badge of honor. It's like the Grammys. It's a badge of honor.
Yeah.
But is it gonna give you a career? No. And I say to anybody out there as an artist, whether no matter what the genre of music is if you can build a great back catalogue, that's the object. If you can build a great back catalogue, 3, 4, 5 albums, stand behind what you do, be happy to perform that on stage, and make a living, you are some of the luckiest people in the music industry, and that's actually my goal. That is my pure goal. Not worrying about Spotify top 40, not worrying about whether a song gets to number one. All I care about is having a back catalogue that when I get to 80, I can look back and be like, oh, that song that nobody liked, it still sounds really good. You know, kind
Yeah,
of
yeah. And for your
and
fans to be like that still, because that's how all the big guys make a living now. You don't know all the guys from yesteryear who are making rock and whatever else, pop and soul in the 70s. A lot of rock guys, particularly, they're still on tour. So I guess if you fulfill your aim, you could still be on tour. I mean, virus permitting, uh, making a great living.
100%. And those people are still on tour because they have true fans. And my opinion of how to reach out to true fans is, and it goes against the grain of how to make business for music, which is just singles and singles and singles, get as many features as you can in the world because all the algorithms put up. My advice is, if you want real fans, make albums, and try and get them heard as much as you can, because I think that's what helps people in the still touring, have 20-year careers. They tend to have had that legacy behind them. I know acts that have had top 40 songs in the world. They can't sell 500 tickets to a show, and the royalties in music now. This isn't the 90s. You There's very few people who can collect their royalties as their pension. Very few, very few. I mean, even acts that have top 10 songs on Spotify right now cannot do that. Taylor Swift can, and there's a lot can, but it's I think it's a lot harder now that.
Some of the older guys, right?
Sorry, Tom.
So it would be like literally Ed Sheeran, Taylor Swift, maybe some of the old catalog acts who just people keep on streaming and buying. I guess with some of the older ones, they buy their physical things, but it's literally, as you say, almost no one else. So you have to play live.
There's no one else. I mean, even you take a great act like uh Bon Iver. Bon Iver probably couldn't have a pension of the royalties, and that's a scary sign of the times. Now he probably deserves to, but does he? It's just I mean that's I'm not sure if like the older generation have kind of really addressed that in the sense that they realize that it's incredibly hard to make a living from music, and I don't really see why that is other than greed. I don't really know why, because there's many people consume music now on such a high level, and I don't want to mention names because I'm thinking I'm going to get blacklisted from certain aggregators and platforms. It's a little bit weird. It's a little bit excessive. And I'm not saying here trying to. Again. I'm very lucky. I'm very lucky, but I can't help but feel. But my heart, like at this point in time, COVID kicking in, nobody touring. I can't help but just feel so sorry for some acts who just cannot like really struggling right now. This is no one feels sorry for musicians because it's like actors. Everyone presumes that they make huge levels of income.
Or if they
But
don't, if they're just aspiring ones. Actually, a lot of what happens to people is people are like, well, why are you trying to do that? Why don't you just, get a real job or whatever? And that's horrible for people who feel like they've got to be musicians or, actors or anything creative. But musicians,
yeah, I mean, it's almost like there's a pressure, isn't there? The people placing themselves that because they're known amongst their social circle. Oh, that's the singer, or that's that you put. I live in Los Angeles. Hollywood is literally just over that hill, and it's it's dangerous. Making a living doesn't define you as an artist. It really doesn't. It really doesn't. I know some people were just light years ahead. I messaged I messaged an artist yesterday because there's about maybe 5 or 6 acts in electronic music that I'm envious of their sonics. Like, I'm obsessed with the way a record sounds, completely obsessed with the tone and the sonics. And there's one guy I was upset, and I was just like, I'm just so jealous of the way you get your records to sound. Um, and he's not a multi millionaire. He doesn't have $100 million in his account, but he's better than a lot of people that do. So it's just don't don't put that pressure on yourself. It's really tough because if you don't come from money as well growing up, if you're a working class kid, it's very tough to balance trying to make a living and pursue your love and your passion. Um, it's a lot easier if you don't have that stress. And the one thing about creativity is, I'm not sure what it is. Creativity in production, stress and anxiety is a cancer to creativity. I remember seeing a friend of mine sent me an interview, and this sounds weird, but it's one of the best things I've ever seen, with John Cleese from Monty Python talking about the art of creativity. Highly recommend it. I think it's a corporate gig to someone like Amstrad in the 80s. Um, and he's 100% right. He's just there's this stress that can just eat up into that. This completely eat up into that, and what I see it a lot with, more so with the dance music radio in the UK, in the sense that there's a pressure to succeed. So in order to succeed, that creates kind of repetition. So, you know, if you listen to radio, most people when they listen to radio don't want to be challenged. You know,
Yeah.
it's 8:45. It's 8:45 in the morning. They want to get to work. They listen to the radio each day. They don't want to listen to Thelonious Monk while they're about to check in at work. It's going to freak them out. The radio st- but I reckon a lot larger percentage of people do, but the radio stations don't do that because they have advertisers to um to look after in order to, you know. So it's um so that leads a lot of acts to get into that side of music, but what that does is cheapen them as artists, because this is always my biggest gripe with my personal self as an artist is being known, at one hand, being known for making a couple of 3.5 minute records. Now, if you can do it in a cool way, I still hold Ocean Drive up as one of the best pieces of pop music in the last 5 years, if I'm ever so humble.
Yeah.
Um,
It, it's
if I can humbly say, but I've made some awful records as well. There's no being around the bush, but I was really fortunate to have success with a record like that. But a lot of acts who kind of apply a little few too many shortcuts have a bubble of success and then suddenly drop off. That must be tough. That must be hard. So, um, but then again, there's acts. There's that. I mean, for me, there's acts like Fortet, you know, Jamie XX. I mean, Jamie has the XX to, you know, kind of help his career, but and that like Fortet, he you know, he's found his groove, and he's, you know, he works with I'm not sure who it is now, Domino or Ninja Tune, but just persistent, being really good at what he does. And I think if you truly love music, um, that that side comes out. And there really is a splintered part of music where people do get into it because they want to be famous. There's no beating around the bush. There's a sect of music that wants to be famous, and then there's a sect that just want to make music. And there's nothing wrong in that. I would actually say one one of the biggest mistakes I made was never wanting to be famous, ever wanting to be famous, and I still don't today. But that's hindered me in the sense that, yeah, this is someone who's made number one songs, X amount of plays, blah blah blah. You know, major label pushing it as well kind of helps a little bit. It's not just all about the actual music, and doors are shut to me. But if I was famous, they would have been a lot more open. But at the same time, I'm not pursuing those avenues anymore because I realized I just want to focus on my artist career. So, you know, there's a huge act the other day. We're looking for UK house sounds for this. Matt, I'm not going to mention that name. We're looking, you know, because I don't want to, you know, shit on them, but huge name. I'm looking for a UK house sound. Who's to go to? Oh, it's this guy. Okay. So you want some tracks? Oh yeah, yeah. You can send some. Okay. You're gonna pay me for my time? No.
what? So they just want free music.
I mean, I've kind of earned my, you know, I've kind of proved it. You know, one of my happiest moments was PBS. PBS is like the US equivalent of BBC. Well, maybe not as political, but they it's basically it goes but like fundraising, and the documentaries are they made some great documentaries, and they did a short documentary on spot on YouTube, about what makes a Spotify song. And it's really interesting because music has adapted to Spotify and the platform. And a couple of minutes in, I'm watching it, and a couple of minutes in, they mentioned Swish Swish by Katy Perry, which is the song I produced. And I couldn't have been happier. I couldn't have been happier because everything they said, they absolutely hit the nail on the head. That that intro that's gonna grab someone, the the basic kind of elements to it, making it, if you can make the bass line into a hook, the sonics, everything about it, they just completely summed up. There's it wasn't like revealing all the grand secrets. It was like it's very obvious. And I couldn't have been prouder than them doing that. I, I'm a little bit annoyed with the song because I think the song ended up being a lot longer than it initially was going to be. I think in its previous inception, sorry, in its previous form, it it would have been a lot more formulaic to the Spotify world.
It would have been
It would
even
have been
more perfect for Spotify.
100. Oh yeah, 100%. Because it was a lot shorter. It was just Katy Perry sing on it, and then it got extended. I don't know, to about 4 minutes, 4.5 minutes. And the reality is, people's attention spans are a lot shorter nowadays than 10, 15 years ago. I'm certainly guilty of that. I can't help being in the studio and every 10 minutes, click, click, and it's like it's borderline illness with me. So yeah, it was even shorter, kind of to the point. But my goal with that song was to kind of trick people into thinking, okay, this is going to be a standard kind of Katy Perry song, starts with chords, piano chords, and singing, and then basically switch, almost like a Run DMC kind of walk, um, Run DM Run DMC versus Aerosmith type thing, where it's like this weird culture clash of like house music with like with pop music, like pop music ballad. So that was my goal with that. So yeah, I threw my hat into the ring of like producing for acts slightly around there, and that only came about because we had a mutual friend. So um, and yeah, yeah, I still get asked to work for free on stuff. It's
That is
just it's a funny old business, and I don't even ask people to work for free. Like I've not, my opinion is if you work a day, you get a day's rate. Doesn't even have to be a lot, just a token gesture. It could be 100 quid. It could be 100 quid. I don't ever ask a mix engineer to do something on for free or anything like that. So it's a strange old it's a strange old business.
And what do you
Yeah,
think would be the case with the live side of it? I mean, I guess you don't know any more than anyone else. I mean, people are putting gigs in the diary for next year, but like no one knows if they're going to go ahead. And as you said, you feel for a lot of younger acts, kind of acts who are still on their way up.
yeah. I mean, I really do. Again, I don't have a magic wand or a crystal ball where I can predict how things are going to turn out. I do hope, whether it's a year, 2 years down the line, things do resume to 100% kind of capacity to what they were the same. I hope people coming together is not affected. There's something borderline spiritual about a mass of people coming together and being on the same level. Um, I think Faithless did a song about that. We Come One or something like that. There is it's the closest. I kind of have like a foundation of kind of religion kind of in my psyche, but there's nothing come to more spiritual experience than seeing 20,000, 30,000, 40,000 people on the same level. There's something about that, and I really hope that culture doesn't change. I really hope, because it'd be a shame for people not to be able to ever experience that. But yeah, you're 100% right, Tom. I'm seeing dates of 2021 coming back. I know I'm due to play Coachella. That's scheduled for next spring, and it may happen. It might not happen. It could. And sorry, Tom.
Fingers crossed. It would be so. It would be so good.
It's out of hands. It's out of hands. I'm a piece of it, but I'm also in a fortunate position to be able to be at peace with it. Um, I it's really tough that you you look at the theatre world, you look at the touring world, beyond the acts, sound engineers, even the person who has the company to rent portaloos, you know, it's been so decimated, and there's been no help. There's been no help from financial help because the live music industry, as well as live sporting events and theatre as well, are got to be the last industries to recover. And there's nothing being done. Nothing being done. And it's a shame because I don't envy the governments because it's very tough to be able to pay people that need it the most. I mean, how do you kind of dictate who does and who doesn't? It's very blanket formula applied to a problem, but there really is a problem. There really is. I'm not sure how it is in the UK. Obviously, I speak to family and friends, and it seems to be getting a little bit more positive in the UK, which is great.
Yeah.
But what's the sense in the UK?
Well, I think it's things are better in the UK and in Europe than they are in the US for sure. But at the same time, I think Sam Fender played a gig, one of the first like socially distanced gigs. I'm not sure how that went, but I mean, in reality, as you say, live music is a spiritual experience.
Yeah.
So, and
Let's be
spiritual when it's probably not like done in like a kind of weird socially distanced way with everybody in face masks and stuff. It's not going to be the same thing, particularly
it's,
the sort of music that you make as well.
exactly. But at the same time, it's you got to be unselfish but bastard to encourage mass gatherings. It's
Yeah.
it's a very strange time because there's just such a it's very difficult to understand what is true and what isn't. I remember when COVID first kicked in, masks aren't going to do anything. Oh, everybody needs to wear a mask. Blah 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 blah. Now that doesn't mean COVID doesn't exist. COVID it exists. I'm not I'm not an anti-vaccinator. I'm not I need my freedoms. No, I'm kind of the opposite. But it doesn't help that there's such a distortion of facts and truth. You know, there's a if you 170,000 dead in the US, 170,000. But then there's reports that if you have COVID in your system, but you have a heart attack and that you die from COVID. But then again, it's 170,000. It's just
Yeah.
it's just very tough, and it's very arrogant to say this is right unless you're a scientist or you have the information. So I I can see both sides of the argument. I can understand why people are frustrated and just want to carry on, like the Elon Musk of the world, you know. But
Yeah.
if you can do that without any financial motive, then be saying that, then I'm probably gonna listen to you a lot more.
Yeah.
So I I, I mean the reality is this with live music and music right at this point in time. You're right. You got the socially distanced stuff, you got the mask stuff, you got the live streams. But let's be honest, it's lame.
Yeah.
It's absolutely lame. I do a live stream, and it's nothing to do with the acts that are doing it. Like all the best to you, like continue to do it, but it doesn't beat a live communal experience.
No,
And
not for either side, not for the audience, not for the people doing the gig.
100%. I hope the government encourage, like they have their schemes with the restaurants, paying half price for a meal to stimulate the restaurant trade. I hope they do that with live music. I mean, the British government have tended to be negative towards live music ever since the early 90s with rave music and mass congregations, because they're, you know, a little bit, they don't want mass congregations, whether it's activism or whether it's music. You know, it tends to be a rhetoric that's been, but I really hope they can look beyond this and help um, stimulate live music again once it comes back. But the other thing as well, this will be the last thing I'm going to say on the matter, and this point actually scares me probably the most, because at the moment it's out of our hands. There's nothing we can do. So nothing promoters can do, nothing, um, you know, artists can do. But I think artists and fans are gonna be manipulated into reducing their fees massively uh, when it comes back around. And there'll be no reason why, because I think ticket prices will probably go up. But I think the desperation of acts having to do shows will be manipulated by concert promoters, and that's a scary thought. You
Yeah,
know that, yeah, acts could be getting a quarter of what they used to get. So um, I just hope there's good promoters out there. I hope you know the percentages stay the same. And I've seen two sides. I've seen companies within music be very, very good to their staff right now, continue to employ their staff, even though they're hemorrhaging money, because they know they just want their staff to be okay and pay the bills. And then I saw other acts fire their entire staff force within 2 days of COVID, and then go on videos about raise money for the tour managers, where you just fired your tour manager 2 days ago, and now you're asking everybody to pay tour managers, and you've got tons of money in the bank. So it's a very, I think it's a very, very, very good time to get rid of people. Um, and I've seen some very charitable people at the moment, and we'll see, you know. But that's going to be the interesting thing, whether artists are actually paid the fair rate or whether they're exploited.
I can easily imagine what you're saying coming true and people being so. Like, fingers crossed that doesn't happen. Adam, thank you so much for taking the time to do this podcast. I really, really appreciate it. And it's one of my favorite episodes. It's been really far-reaching. I always finish by asking people, because the name of the podcast is quite tongue-in-cheek, obviously, being called Greatest Music of All Time. And I always love to ask artists, you know, who are your greatest of all time? You know, who are your heroes and your favorite artists?
I think if you're asking me who are my favorite artists of all time, it completely depends on the on what point in my life we're talking about. But if we're talking purely dance music, what got me into dance music? It was the house music that was kind of broke into the mainstreams um, of UK pop culture. So Chemical Brothers, Daft Punk, Armand van Helden, acts like that. You know, I was certainly drawn to that. Now, is that the greatest music of all time? No, it's not the greatest music of all time. Um, you know, it's not Mozart, but it is to me. You know, so you know, you know, if it wasn't being inspired by that, I probably would have gone into another genre of music. I still had an obsession with music. My dad, you know, my dad was a record dealer. You know, he had an incredible collection of music growing up. Um, so, but yeah, when you went that kind of age where you're very kind of inspired, probably between about 14 to 18. Yeah, that UK dance music around that time was my big influence. So to answer your question, yeah, the dance music to come out of Europe around that time, but also completely inspired by all the music coming out of Chicago. You know, there's always been this rich cultural exchange between the UK, France, and America. So the likes of Todd Terry, Roy Davis Jr., Paul Johnson, um, going all the way back to Frankie Knuckles, Ron Hardy. There's always been this back and forth, and it's really nice to see that. And I don't think enough acts give credit to the people that came before them. I don't really see that now with younger acts that make house music, but I'm completely indebted to those acts making it culturally acceptable for me to be able to make a living, because they kind of changed the palette and the tone where it's not alien to them to hear M1 piano or organ or those kind of sounds. So yeah, those house acts and those electronic acts that came before me, yeah, it's my favorite music.
Thanks so much, Adam, for taking the time to do this. It's been really interesting, and yeah, as you say, like not every single person's answer is going to be the same, and like I always feel like my answer to that question wouldn't be Mozart either, but it's whatever is Mozart to you that is most important, and that's why it's so interesting to talk about it. And I love all of that music as well, especially like Daft Punk Discovery. It's like, I don't know, I can't think of a better album.
It's an incredible. It's an the strangest thing about that album is the stuff that wasn't released as singles is aged the best. Like Too Long, um, Something About Us. I still to this day hold that as a mix reference. As this is one of the best sounding records, and God knows how many years ago that was.
I
That
think it
was that came out.
was 2000 that it came out.
Exactly. But it's albums like that I got, before even making music, I got obsessed with wanting to know how they made that record, even to the point where I know Nilesh, Niles mastered that record, rest in peace. And I wanted to know, like, who made it, who mixed it, what what did they use to get this, what did they do? And this is even before knowing how anything about music. And yeah, Discovery was the album which made me look deeper into electronic music. But their Alive 97 in Birmingham, their live show was the thing that made me want to go into DJ. Because to this day, that is still my favorite. Was it 90 minutes, 60 minutes, 90 minutes of electronic music? Because it was still that era where they were making a lot harder music. They were releasing on Soma. It was around that time. It was just really kind of pounding 4/4 kind of techno, but it had character. And the one thing electronic music can tend to lack is its individual character. It can, again, like pop music, it can suffer from being generic.
Yeah.
And I think with pop music as well, it's those acts that really stamp their character on it. I would unashamedly say The Weeknd is my favorite pop star at the moment. Um, it's I think he's great. I think he's fantastic. And Daft Punk installed their character on their music. 100%. Chemical Brothers did, and it sounds like them. It sounds like them, and that's the benchmark to hold. Yeah, but 100%. The Discovery Daft Punk was that was the thing that made me look deeper into even into house music.